Hello my soccer universe and welcome to the review of round 15 of this year's Serie A season. Last weekend we thought that we saw the first blip for Lazio. They've lost at Parma. And there was always the thought that they actually might fall off, as with Fiorentina. However, now Lazio beat the league leaders Napoli twice. Once in the cup, yes, Napoli played a B team, and then they also beat them away from home in Naples. And Napoli did not look that exciting. Yes, driving rain, but this was very slow. Lazio simply outworked them, and I would say Marco Baroni's side at this moment has to be considered very much for real. They will make a Champions League push. Not for the title. I don't see them going for the title. I think Lazio is a really well coached side, and how everyone overlooked Marco Baroni after the great job he did at Verona is a little bit beyond me. I'm really wondering, Milan, why didn't you look at this guy? This is the Milan DNA. Take an unfancied coach like an Arrigo Sacchi, like a Fabio Capello, turn them into superstars. Lazio, you did great. Also, taking Tijani Noslin onto his club was also a masterstroke. He was the man of the week for me. But of course, Lazio was not the only story. The other one has to be Atalanta, who are now top of the table thanks to Napoli losing. And this Atalanta side has a little bit of a different air around them than previous ones. This one is really deep squad and really well in grinding out wins as well. Milan, especially in first half, were not that bad in the game. However, once Pulisic came on, Fonseca went a little bit too safe, bring on Loftus-Cheek. Didn't really work out. It's another damning defeat for Milan. They cannot win against top 8 teams unless it was Inter, and that was the only high point in Serie A this season. I think only 5 points in games against these teams doesn't speak for a good record, and it also shows you that Milan will have a really hard time qualifying for the Champions League. They better win that whole darn thing. Not gonna happen. It's a lost season. And as much as I do like Fonseca, and I think you need to give Fonseca time, because last season at Lille, similar story at the beginning of the season, and then Lille kicked in the next game in the second half of the season. I can see this happening at Milan. I just think that the gap is already too big and there are too many teams up there. I would still think that Inter are the class of the league, but hey. The last thing I want to mention, we had 2 really weird jersey matchups this weekend as well. I mean, whatever Juve and Bologna played in was just crazy. But also Venezia playing at home in light blue against Como in black, when you would expect it more or less the other way around, was also an odd one, although this one didn't look that bad. But before we go into Serie A, let's review what happened in the Coppa Italia in the midweek. I had quite some trepidation ahead of Milan's Coppa Italia round of 16 clash with Sassuolo, basically because Sassuolo is always such an impossible opponent, and Sassuolo is really riding high in Serie B. In addition, Fonseca made a few changes to the squad, so that also didn't fill me much with confidence. However, I shouldn't have worried. After 25 minutes, Milan had a 4-0 lead, and they had even a goal called off early on. Chukwueze then opens the score in the 12th. Reinders, he is in such great form. Again, takes a shot from that side box. It of course goes in. Chukwueze adds another one after the Tammy assist, and then Leao also gets in on the action. Could have more. This was pure dominance, and then Milan were a little bit cruising in the second half. Calabria, he got his start. I was so happy to see him score as well. Gets another one. Yes, Mulattieri didn't need to score that one goal, but Tammy Abraham in 61st makes it 6-1, and that's how the game ends. This is how I like my cup ties. Get it done early, cruise, and save your energies for the big game against Atalanta on Friday. In the other Coppa Italia game on Tuesday, we saw a similarly lopsided result with Bologna beating Monza 4-0. Castro being the main man, assisting 3 and scoring the 4th goal himself. Ahead of the clash between Fiorentina and Empoli, of course, all thoughts were with Bove, where it turns out that he might have a heart condition that may eventually prevent him from playing in Serie A. That's one to watch. The game itself, Empoli actually held quite well with Fiorentina. They took a lead through a Kong already early on. Fiorentina turned it around the second minute. Ken and then Sotil, that was actually quite nicely deflected. By the 70th minute, had turned the game around. However, Esposito in the 75th minute gets an equalizer as Empoli tried to push for that one. It goes straight to penalties, where Ekong first misses the second penalty for Empoli. However, immediately after, Ranieri sees his penalty saved, and then Moise Kean on the 4th one actually puts it over the bar. All others do convert, and so Empoli are through to the next round. And in the last one, Conte's gamble to field a second-string squad against Lazio away from home did not pay off. It almost would have worked, but Lazio were largely the better team, had a lot of possession, had a lot of pressure on Napoli, had the big chance to take the lead. However, Zaccagni's penalty in the 21st minute was saved, and then it was the Noslin show who scores all 3 goals in the win, in the 32nd, in the 41st, and also in the 50th minute, more or less settling the game. It's only in the 72nd minute that Conte brought on his regular starters. However, Napoli did get an equalizer through Giovanni Simeone, where for a second you thought they might nick this one, but Noslin was the star of the show. To my chagrin, it was very much a nerazzurro Friday evening, both Inter and Atalanta getting home wins. Inter a 3-1 over Parma, never really in doubt. Di Marco Barella and Thuram by the 66th minute had given Inter a commanding 3-0 lead. Yes, there was an own goal, they pulled it back in the 81st, a teeny bit, but Inter firmly in control and underlining that they are one of the favorites for this Serie A title. And in the late kickoff, Atalanta got a late, big 2-1 win over Milan that keep the Serie A hopes very much alive and also keep Milan very much at bay and on the outside looking in, even for the Champions League race at this moment. The game to itself, I think, was overall a gripping affair where Milan from the kickoff had a good chance by Pulisic that could have made it already 1-0 after 11 seconds played. However, Atalanta also struck early, the Ketelare in the 12th minute. Who else, former Milan player, gives Atalanta the lead with a header, but I think it was a foul in a build-up because the way he pushed Theo down did not look very kosher to me. However, Milan were undeterred, very much in the game. They had already a goal by Morata called off, but then Morata gets his goal. A brilliant run by Leao, who sees Morata in the box. It's 1-1, fully deserved. It was an open game, both teams having chances, maybe the slightly bigger ones for Atalanta. In the second half, it was a little bit more cautious there, and I always felt that Atalanta is a little bit more dangerous, but Milan did have their chances. However, also Pulisic had to come off late in the first half, where a lot of attacking threat for Milan got lost. But you thought it might end up in a draw that really would not help any of these two teams. And then there's a late winner when a corner is whipped in. Kolasinac gets his head on it, and Lookman, totally forgotten by Emerson Royal at the far post, can head it in from a very acute angle. Milan then are pushing, cannot find an equalizer, and it's another damning loss, halting their momentum. The less said about Genoa's 0-0 draw with Torino, the better. So let's move on to the WTF kit matchup of the weekend. Juve at home in their away jersey against Bologna's wild, epilepsy-inducing third kit was definitely one thing that I did not have on my bingo card. Looked awful, to be honest. The game, though, really lived up. Bologna very much dominating Juve for about an hour. Should have taken more than a meager 1-0 lead at the halftime. Ndoye getting the goal in the 30th minute when actually the pressure of Bologna had a little bit subsided, and when Pobega in the 52nd made it then 2-0, and yes, he set out his red card ban in the cup round, you really thought that Bologna are getting a big win against their former coach Thiago Motta, who of course at that point was already sent off. Cope minus, though, 10 minutes later gives Juve a lifeline, but it really seemed like Bologna can't seem it out, but then Mbangula in stoppage time gets Juve, I would say, a slightly lucky equalizer, but a point. Again, still, Juve will have a hard task getting into the Champions League next year. And then in the evening, Roma get their first win under coach Ranieri, a 4-1 over Lecce. It was a little bit of hard work in the first half because as much as Roma dominated, they only had a measly goal by Salamakers and then give away a penalty that Kristovic converts in the 40th minute. However, Mancini then in the 59th minute puts Roma on the winning road. Pisili just a few minutes later gets a third, and then late on Moussa Kone adds a fourth for a resounding 4-1 win for the Romans. Fiorentina may have been ousted in the Coppa by local rivals Empoli. However, thanks to a Cataldi goal in the 24th minute, they get their 8th league win in a row, a 1-0 over Cagliari. And yes, last games against Inter got postponed. Speaking of which, Bove is feeling well enough. However, his future in Serie A still very much in doubt. And speaking of Empoli, they get a very easy 4-1 away win at Hellas Verona. All goals coming in the first half. And we really have to worry at this stage about Verona. They seem like one team that might actually get relegated. relegated. In soggy, foggy, rain-drenched Venice, we probably got one of the games of the weekend, with Venezia played a 2-2 draw with Como. Venezia had a 1-0 lead at the half through a Caviglia goal. However, right after they have a Candela own goal in the 49th and a Belotti penalty in the 56th turned it around for Como. But then Orestiano in the 69th equalized again, and Caviglia thought he had the winner. However, there was then a slight offside in the build-up, and so a famous win for Venezia. It was not. It was also a rather odd jersey matchup because Venezia were playing in light blue, though not bad looking. And then Lazio do it again after beating Napoli at home in the Coppa, a B team. Napoli's A team really have a hard time showing up, and Lazio just outworked them. And you have to ask yourself, I mean, Napoli is now out of the cup, they don't play in Europe. Why is this team being outworked by a Lazio team that is really finding great form? There's still a question, will Lazio eventually fall off? But what they're showing at the moment is really impressive. The winning goal came through Isaksen, who was assisted by the man of the moment, Noslin, and Napoli failed to find an equalizer. Lukaku looking really awful. There are many questions starting to be asked of Conte. And in the Monday evening game, Udine went to Monza and beat them 2-1 away from home, meaning they stay in the top half of the table while Monza remain relegation threatened, and Alessandro Nesta's time at Monza is probably in danger. Udine started up brightly, got an early through Luca, actually had a few more chances as well, but Monza got better into the game, and early in the second half, Kyriakopoulos gets the equalizer, but then Udine ratcheted up again, and Biol in the 70th minute scores the winner. I mentioned already quite a lot in the open and also during the review, but Atalanta is now top of the table ahead of Napoli, and if Inter and Fiorentina win their game in hand against each other, either one of these teams will join Atalanta on top of the league. Inter still has to be considered the favorite. They are the deepest team in the league. They also are the most experienced team in this situation. However, I'm starting to take Atalanta really seriously at this moment. Lazio sitting in 5th place, but I think this Lazio team is a really good one. For Napoli, they have to go through the funk with Conte. Some questions have to be asked from Conte, and I'm sure they will get active also in the transfer market. But the biggest stories have to be definitely Juve and Milan. Very well off the pace. Either of these teams will have a really hard time cracking into the top 4, which is a massive disappointment for either one of these two big clubs. Motta not really working at Juventus, the injury crisis of course not helping as well, and for Milan, their defensive frailties, I mean conceding always goals on the back post, that's not gonna work. Milan can be scintillating one day, but defensively they're an absolute mess, and it's a mountain to climb for either of these two giants. So look at the schedule for the next round. The weird thing for me is that there's no real top clash unless you look at the one on Monday. That's a big one. Lazio against Inter will tell us a whole lot about Lazio, but also a little bit about Inter, who of course play also in the midweek. Atalanta is actually taking on Real Madrid. Probably the pick of the bunch, I would argue. Other than that, Atalanta have to go to Cagliari. Napoli have to go to Udine. Both grounds are not that easy anymore. Juve, let's see whether they can get a win against lowly Venezia. And then Milan have the centenary game with their beautiful new jerseys against Genoa, which I find a fitting opponent because Genoa is the oldest team in Italy. I have always some trepidation around Milan playing in specialty jerseys. So those are my few thoughts on this whole week of Italian football. Coppa Italia action was quite interesting. League action also, unless you're a Milan fan, of course, or a Juve fan for that matter as well. Hey, at least Juve fought back against Bologna. In any case, let me know your thoughts on Serie A in the comments below. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like these. Talk to you soon with more things in my soccer universe. Bye! Hey there! I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, here are some videos and playlists that you may enjoy too. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever something happens in my soccer universe. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye!